editing the title and meta description while you write the post is probably the best practice when you write new posts, but it can be a bit slow and tedious if you inherit a site with existing posts. It's putsy to go into each post and edit those two fields. That's why the Yoast team included a bulk editor. Let's write a couple of titles and meta descriptions using that tool. We'll go to Yoast SEO, Tools, and then the bulk editor. We can now tab between titles and meta descriptions. First, let's write a few titles. I'll sort these by publication date. And the first title I want to change is Planning for Your Big Event. Let's change that to 3 tips for planning your wedding cake. Certainly people are actually searching for wedding cake, and we want that to show up in the search results. So that's a good one. Let's click Save. And now let's scroll down to Birthday Cake for Fido. This is about a birthday cake for your pet. So let's make sure pet is in the title. I'll type in healthy birthday cake recipe for your pet. And we can click Save. Then we can do the same thing with meta descriptions. One thing to keep in mind is make sure you press Save or Save All before you tab, otherwise you could lose your progress. Under Description, now we can edit all of our meta descriptions. Again, I want to edit this post about planning for your big event. Let's change this to Don't be caught by surprise. Order your cake on time. Get it tasting. And make sure it's delivered safely. I'll click Save. And these are probably things that people are actually searching for. For example, how soon do I order my cake? How do I get a tasting for my cake? How do I make sure it's delivered correctly? So when people search for these terms, they'll see those words bolded in the search engine results page. Let's go down to Birthday Cake for Fido, and let's add a new description. I'll change this one to How to Safely Pamper Your Pet with a Healthy Birthday Cake filled with vegetables, oats, and meat. In this case, I wanted to point out that we are talking about pets, we're talking about pampering, we're talking about birthday cake, and I specifically left out chocolate, which is dangerous for dogs. If you have a ton of titles to write, I'd start by filtering by a post type. Maybe all of your products, then all of your blog posts, and then all of your pages. It'll make it a little bit more manageable. You shouldn't have to use this tool often, but if you ever do get a big SEO audit for hundreds of posts, you can easily save hours of work using this bulk editor tool. One thing to note, this tool edits the SEO title, not your blog post title. Let me show you what that looks like. I'll go to the posts. I'll see Birthday Cake for Fido, which is the blog post title. Let's click into that. I'll scroll down, and here we can see the SEO title that we crafted earlier, Healthy Birthday Cake Recipe for Your Pet. So you'll see this on the search engine results page, not on the blog post itself. If you want to edit the blog post titles, you can do that one at a time here in the editor, or you can export all of your WordPress content, edit it in a spreadsheet, and then re-import it. We talked about the title separator briefly while going through the setup wizard. That's the little symbol between the page title and the site name. And this is just one of the settings that you can tweak to change how our page shows up in the search engine results page, or the SERP. Yoast has done a great job putting all these settings together in one place. We can find it back on our site under Yoast SEO, and then search appearance. The first setting is the title separator. This is purely aesthetic, so pick one that works for your brand. The next two settings are for the home page of your site. These settings are useful when you have a list of blog posts as your home page. For my site, I have a front page, so I can edit these settings by going to the front page itself. And then by going all the way down and editing them right here. The next setting is the knowledge graph, and the knowledge graph is what search engines use to understand what your site is about. For us, we're still a company, so I'm going to leave that as is. We can click Save Changes, and we're done here. There is another tab that I want to show you, Content Types. Let's click on that. What we can do on this page is we can request what sort of content appears in search engines. We can choose if the date is available, and if we want the Yoast SEO settings to appear on that type of content, in this case our posts. We can also choose the default SEO title. For our posts, it's the title, the page, the separator, and the site title, and we can add other variables here. So we could add the primary category to our site title if we really wanted. We can do the same thing with our meta description. You can always start with the title. For every single custom post type on your site, you should see an option on this page. So if you have a portfolio custom post type, those would show up right here. And if you have a product custom post type, those would also show up right here. Yoast gives you a lot of tools to customize if and how each type of content is displayed. There's a ton of other settings to tweak if you want to dig in, but most sites won't need this level of customization, but it is here if you need it. Whenever you're done, click Save Changes. One of the great features built into the Yoast SEO plugin is the XML sitemap functionality. XML sitemaps are helpful for search engines as it gives them the full list of pages to crawl. They don't have to find each page manually by clicking on every single one of your links. You could get a separate sitemap plugin, and I'm typically a fan of multiple smaller plugins that each do their own thing. But because SEO functionality and XML sitemap functionality are so similar, this is one of those cases where it's easier for all of the features to be in one plugin. Let's go to our admin, and then we can see our sitemap under Yoast SEO, General, and then Features. And we want to make sure XML sitemaps is turned on. What I want to do is show you what a sitemap actually looks like. Let's click on this little question mark here, and we can see that it explains what it does here. It adds the XML sitemaps, and we can actually see the XML sitemap right here. I'll open this in a new tab. And now we can see exactly what the search engine sees. We can see that there's a sitemap here, and there's several sub-sitemaps, our posts, our pages, our categories, and our tags. So we could click into our posts and see all of the posts on our site. While you're here, you can do a once-over to make sure that everything is showing up. There's one more thing we can do. We can add this sitemap to search engines directly. Yoast has instructions for all sorts of search engines, but we're going to focus on Google since it's the biggest. We're going to go to Google Search Console. If you haven't already, sign into Google Search Console and add your website to it. If you have multiple websites, then in the sidebar, you'll need to select the specific website you want to work on. Once you're here, make sure Index is open, and then click on Sitemaps. You can remove any old or outdated sitemaps down here, or we can add a new sitemap. Let's go back to our XML sitemap here. I'll click the back button, and here are all of our sitemaps, so I'll copy this link. I'll go back to Google Search Console, and I'll paste it in. Then we can click Submit. The sitemap has been submitted successfully. We can close Google Search Console and be very happy with the sitemap functionality. Some other sitemap plugins force you to manually update your sitemap after every post, which can take a lot of time. This one does everything in the background. Your sitemaps are always going to be up to date. Sitemaps are highly automated, so with any luck, you should only have to configure this once. During setup, we connected our site to Google Search Console, but we didn't connect to any other similar tools. We can do that under Yoast SEO, General, and then Webmaster tools. There are multiple ways to verify a site, so if you already verified your site, you don't have to redo anything here. If you haven't done it, then you can click on these links to get started. Even though this looks blank, we actually verified using a different system in the setup wizard, so do not worry that you don't see anything right here. When Yoast is connected to Google Search Console, the plugin will automatically pull in any errors for you. You can see these errors under Yoast SEO and then Search Console. Since we just added our site to the Search Console, we won't see anything in here just yet. But if you do have any big SEO issues, in a few days this should show up right here, and the Search Console will automatically email you about smaller issues. When you see errors in this Search Console or through some other Webmaster tool, know that there are different levels of error. Sometimes the errors are very minor and can be taken care of in a few weeks or months. But if you see any sort of bigger issue, like a 404 error, I try to take care of those immediately. We'll do this in an upcoming video. I've mentioned the Google Search Console a few times, and it's there to let you know when there's an error crawling your site. And I've already mentioned how powerful it is to see these Search Console errors. I'm going to show you on a live site what it looks like to see some of these errors in the Search Console and how you can fix them. You can see the errors under Yoast SEO and then Search Console. If you don't see anything here, you need to authenticate first, and you can do that right here under Settings if you haven't already. If you still see an empty table, like I do right here, then either there aren't any errors, or Google hasn't had time to find them. This is a bit of a slow process. It took Google a couple of weeks to find all the errors on my site. If Google finds an error, it will log it in your Google Search Console, and you should fix them. If you don't see anything after a while, it means that Google didn't find a mistake. Let's go to one of my personal sites where there are a few errors. Here's one of my sites. I will go to Yoast SEO, Search Console, and we can see a few different errors here. For each error, there are a few options: create redirect, view, and mark as fixed. Now the Search Console doesn't tell us which page the error appears on, which is a bit of a flaw. It only tells us what the broken link looks like. So we have to do a bit of detective work to find out. As an example, let's look at this link, which looks like it's supposed to be going to a product called Fry Thief. It looks like I mistakenly put a dash in the URL and this site doesn't exist. To find this link, we're going to have to do a little bit of detective work. I'll click on Posts and open this in a new tab. And now I'm going to search for this right here, which I think is the mistake. I'll copy this and search for it in my posts. Let's go into this post. I'll click on Edit. When I'm looking for broken links on this pages, especially long ones like this, I like to change the editor to the code view and go from editor to code editor. Now we can see all the links quite easily. I will search for that broken link, and it looks like I tried to link to something that doesn't exist, fry-thief.com. I happen to know the actual website looks like this. That will fix this error. I'll get rid of this notice and click Update. We can close this tab, go back to our Search Console, and mark this as fixed. This will remove it from the list, and you can keep fixing problems until your list is cleared. Obviously, you don't want to mark something as fixed until it's actually fixed. Otherwise, it will reappear in your list. Up until this point, everything can be done with the free version of Yoast. If you have the premium version of Yoast, which is available on their site, there is another tool that we can use. Let's say you want to move a page. Let's say I want to move my privacy page from privacy-policy to just privacy. Then you can change the page URL, but any internal links will also have to change. And in this case, I forgot a link in my menu. So I can click Create Redirect right here, and I can redirect to the original page. Now, any sites that point to this outdated link will be redirected to the correct page. If you don't want to spend money, there are some free redirection plugins in the WordPress repository. They'll work, but they aren't nearly as efficient as this. I go through my Search Console maybe once a month and do quick changes to make sure that all of my links are working for both my users and for Google. The vast majority of your SEO needs can be handled by the free plugin available on WordPress.org, but there are free, really useful features that are available in their premium plugins. The premium version of Yoast SEO includes a couple powerful features. The redirect feature that we showed in an earlier video lets you create redirects from the Search Console. It also lets you create redirects when you're deleting content, which is a huge time saver. If you're big into keywords, another feature is letting you have more than one keyword per post. This is especially useful if your industry has a lot of synonyms. And there are a ton of other features in here. There's also the Yoast WooCommerce plugin. This helps if you're using WooCommerce on your site. You can enable rich pins in Pinterest. So anytime someone pins something from your website, it'll include metadata, like price, if it's in stock, and of course, a link back to your product page. Things like this will make better pins on Pinterest, which should get you more traffic. It also replaces the WooCommerce breadcrumbs with the Yoast ones. This means you don't have to duplicate a bunch of work getting two different breadcrumb systems to work together. There's also local SEO. If you have a physical location, this will help mapping websites like Google Maps understand exactly where you are. If you have a physical location, this one can be really useful. For topsy-turvy cake design, this is probably the most useful premium plugin. You can see all of Yoast's WordPress plugins on their site. There are a few more if you do a lot with news or videos. I've personally used the free version of Yoast on my site for years, and you don't have to get the premium version. but if you want to maximize your time, then they're definitely worth considering. There's one more feature that I'd like to show off that mostly applies to users who build sites for clients. We've spent a bit of time setting up all of these SEO settings. We can actually export these settings, clean them up a little bit, and then import them into any other site. Then you won't have to go through that configuration wizard, as most of the settings will already be configured. Let's go to Yoast SEO, Tools, Import and Export, and now we can export our settings. Let's go ahead and click the bright blue button to export our Yoast settings. And now we can copy and paste this into a code editor. So copy the whole thing and open up my code editor. In this case, I'm using Atom, but you can use any code editor you want, and paste it in. We just need to tweak this a little bit so that it can be reused for future sites. We're going to keep all of the general settings, but we can erase all of the information that's unique to the site. So I'll scroll down. On line 12, I'll get rid of site type. I'll leave staging environment on line 14, since most of the sites will be a staging environment. On line 22, I can get rid of first activated on. On lines 26 through 28, we can get rid of this information. We don't need the logo, or the name, or the type of entity. We can keep scrolling down. All of this looks pretty good. On line 65, I can get rid of another logo, and another name, and another type. And we can get rid of most of the social information on lines 108 and below. We can keep scrolling. And that's about it. Now we can save this file. And the next time you install Yoast, you don't have to go through the setup wizard. You can go straight to Yoast SEO, Tools, Import, Export, and I'll show you this. We can now go Import Settings and just copy and paste this file in. So I can go back to my code editor, copy it all, and paste it in. If you set up a lot of sites for clients, this reusable import file should help you skip a couple steps and save you some time.